He fights those nations. He fights in the day of battle. His feet stand on the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem from the east. And as he lands on it, the Mount of Olives shall split in two from east to west, makes a big valley. Half the mountain moves toward the north, the other half toward the south. And you will flee through my mountain valley. The mountain valley shall reach Azal. Yes, you shall flee as you fled from the earthquake and a historic event, King Uzziah in the 8th century BC. Thus the Lord will come. And look at this. Now we have the rapture proven too in the Old Testament. The saints come with him. He doesn't come and get them. They're already with him. See, it's if you just take the Bible for what it says, this is the oldest prophecy in the Bible. Enoch, if you read in the book of Jude, the earliest prophecy is, behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment on the ungodly for all the ungodly deeds which ungodly men have committed in their ungodliness. It says ungodly 4 times. That's what God thinks of sinners. Enoch says that the Lord comes at the second coming with his saints with him. What is that? Well, if you look at the difference between the first coming of Christ, he came as a baby, and he left from the Mount of Olives. I mentioned that already. And here he is on the Mount of Olives, and he's ascending to heaven after his first coming. And, you know, the covenant theologians chuckle and say, yeah, they have 3 comings or 2. You know, we lost count of how many comings. Well, it's very, very different. When Jesus ascended to heaven from the Mount of Olives in Acts chapter 1 and Luke chapter 24, it says that he stretched out his arms and began blessing his disciples. The first thing you realize, in fact, I just did that reading in my quiet time this week. It was beautiful to read that only saved people saw him. Jesus was only seen by loving eyes and touched by loving hands after he rose from the dead. No unsaved person saw him, not one. And he goes up to that Mount of Olives, only surrounded by believers. And as he's standing there, he starts blessing them. And you know how all of us feel unworthy if someone starts saying something nice about us and we just kind of put our head down because we can't believe they're saying such nice things. Can you imagine the Lord saying nice things about you, blessing you? And so he's blessing. He puts his arms out as he blesses them. And as he's blessing them, Luke tells us that he begins to ascend. He starts rising off the ground. But he keeps on. The tense of the verb is he doesn't stop. He keeps on blessing and saying, Peter, thank you, and you've come back, and you're going to follow, shepherd my sheep. Peter, John, oh, I love you. You've been so close to me. Keep going. Oh, Andrew, thanks for bringing people to me. Can you just, they're all just eating it up. And he's going up. And finally, he's out of sight. And they're looking up at him. And they didn't notice 2 more people showed up. Angels are standing there. And so the disciples get done looking up at Christ. And then they say, oh, an angel, hi. And the angel said, oh, don't be alarmed. This same Jesus, whom you've seen go into heaven, will so come in like manner. How he's going to come back the way he left? Raining down blessing and, oh, I love you, you're wonderful. How come it says in 2 Thessalonians 1:7 that he's going to come in fiery vengeance, killing his enemies? That sounds like a disconnect. That's because after this, he comes to get his saints in what is called the harpazo. That's the Greek word, harpazo, which means to snatch. And harpazo in Greek was translated by Jerome, the one who wrote the Roman Catholic Vulgate, if you've ever heard of the Latin Bible, the Vulgate. And when he translated the Greek word harpazo into Latin, do you know what the Greek word harpazo in Latin is? It's the Greek word rapturos. You ever heard of someone say they're just enraptured by the music? What that means is they're just taken away by it. Harpazo means to be literally snatched. When Philip witnessed to the Ethiopian eunuch and led him to Christ, it says the Spirit of God snatched him from the Ethiopian eunuch and deposited him in Caesarea. He takes him to a different place. He scoops him up. People say, what is the rapture? Never heard of the rapture. God's been rapturing people. He raptured Philip from one spot to another. He raptured Elijah right out, and so Enoch. I mean, he's very good at rapturing. And that is the Greek word harpazo, and that's how the saints get with him, because he has come down in like manner. He comes down blessing, and the ultimate blessing is to have Christ come, and in the moment, in the twinkling of the eye, change us and give us our resurrection bodies, and we meet him in the clouds. That is what he promised. That is all his first coming and rapture for his church. So they get with him so that they can come with him as part of his hosts, as he out front is doing what we're going to read about. And it shall come to pass in that day, watch what happens here in chapter 14, verse 6. In that day that there will be no light, the lights will diminish. All of a sudden, already in chapter 18 of Revelation, the electricity has gone off. I wonder how they're going to do everything, because it says all the electricity goes off, all the music stops in Revelation 18 just for the second coming. Can you imagine what's going to happen to a group of people when their iPod stops working and their iPhone doesn't work and they can't stream their videos? All of a sudden the games freeze, and there's going to be a whole generation that'll just go, they don't know how to do. And the Lord turns off all the music, all the electricity goes off, and it goes into this kind of twilight zone where it's unnatural light. And it shall be one day which is known to the Lord, that it's neither day or night. It's kind of like the whole world is in twilight. And evening time it shall happen that it will be light, and in that day it shall be that living waters will flow from Jerusalem. Now that's because Christ's feet hit the Mount of Olives, and it goes north and south. And when it goes north and south, it opens a channel between goes to the Mediterranean and goes to the Dead Sea. And look what happens. Living waters flow from Jerusalem, half of them toward the eastern sea, which we would call the Dead Sea. That's the eastern sea, and half of them toward the Med. You see, it's geographic, and that's what Bible geography helps you with. In the summer and winter it shall occur. So this fountain starts flowing, and it doesn't stop. And the Lord shall be king over all the earth in that day. The Lord is one, and that's his name. And the land shall be turned into a plain. There's a geographic change in the topography. And Jerusalem's raised up like it becomes higher. See, the millennium, there's a total change. We're going from life as we know it toward the kingdom age, and there's going to be geographical changes, but the people shall dwell in it, verse 11, no longer shall there be utter destruction. It's like the Lord. Now, a lot's happening that isn't described here that Jesus tells about in Matthew 25, the judgment of the nations and all that. But Jerusalem will be safely inhabited, and look, did you wonder what happened to the soldiers? Remember I told you they're right in the middle of raping this woman, and they're ravishing this one, and they're breaking in the house and murdering that one. And all of a sudden someone says, look at that. And it's like a fireball is coming down, because it says Jesus comes in flaming fire. And he's coming down surrounded by fire to the top of the Mount of Olives. And look what he does. This sounds just like a neutron bomb. By the way, the Jews invented that too. It shall be, this is the plague which the Lord will strike all the people who fought against Jerusalem. So all these soldiers of all the earth, their flesh shall dissolve while they stand on their feet. Their eyes shall dissolve. Amazing. In their sockets, their tongues, that they were cursing, that they were murderously terrorizing, killing 2/3 of the Jews, helpless, a second Holocaust. And their flesh just drains away, their eyes melt, their tongues dissolve in their mouths. The Lord says, don't tangle with me.